The courtroom felt smaller than it should have. Family courtrooms often do. The ceilings sit lower, the benches packed closer together, as if the building itself understands that the arguments inside aren't just legal, they're personal. My father sat 2 rows behind his attorney, rigid and composed. His posture carried the same quiet authority he used when I was a child being corrected. Across the aisle, my lawyer flipped through a thin folder. It contained almost nothing. Because there wasn't much we were allowed to show. The judge leaned forward slightly as my father's attorney rose to speak. He was a careful man, polished, controlled, the kind of lawyer who never needed to raise his voice because he knew silence could do half the work for him. Your Honor, he began calmly, the facts in this case are not complicated. He stepped slowly across the floor, letting each statement settle before continuing. The respondent has no verifiable employer. A pause. No fixed address for extended periods of time. Another pause. And no consistent record of parental presence. He never pointed at me, but the implication was obvious. Several people in the gallery turned their heads. She disappears for months at a time, he continued evenly. During those periods, her child remains with extended family while she travels without explanation. My father stared straight ahead, his expression unchanged. The attorney folded his hands. She cannot demonstrate stable employment, stable residence, or reliable availability. Then he delivered the line he had clearly rehearsed. No employer, no address, and no defense. The words hung in the room like something official, like a conclusion already written. I sat quietly beside my attorney, looking down at the table. From the outside, their case made perfect sense. My work history didn't exist in any public database. My addresses shifted often enough that even tax records looked irregular, and the longest absences, the months when no one knew where I was, were impossible to explain. Those were the months that cost me birthday parties, parent-teacher conferences, soccer games I had promised I would attend. My daughter never complained directly. But the quiet in her voice when I called from time zones she couldn't pronounce stayed with me long after the calls ended. My father's attorney returned to his seat, confident. My lawyer stood slowly. He was a good man, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. There were limits to what he could say without stepping into territory neither of us was allowed to reveal. He opened his mouth to begin. But the courtroom door opened first. It wasn't loud. Just the soft click of a latch. A woman in a navy suit stepped inside. She moved calmly, not glancing around the room, carrying a dark leather folio tucked against her side. For a moment, no one reacted. Most people assumed she had simply entered the wrong courtroom. But she walked straight down the center aisle, directly toward the bench. My attorney stopped mid-sentence. The judge watched her approach with a faint look of confusion. When she reached the front, she placed the leather folio gently on the bench. Then she spoke. Quietly. Central Intelligence Agency. The temperature of the room changed. Not dramatically. Just enough that every movement stopped. The judge leaned forward. She handed him a credential card, then opened the folio to reveal several neatly clipped documents. He examined the identification longer than most judges would need to. Then he began reading. The courtroom had gone completely silent now. Even the gallery, usually restless with shifting bodies and quiet coughs, had become still. The judge finished the first page. Then the second. His expression tightened slightly. He set the papers down and turned to the bailiff. Clear the gallery. A ripple of confusion moved through the spectators, but the bailiff was already stepping forward. Everyone except counsel will exit the courtroom. Chairs scraped softly across the floor as people gathered their belongings and moved toward the door. My father hesitated, glancing toward his attorney before standing. Within minutes, the room was nearly empty. Only the judge, the attorneys, the woman in the navy suit, and me. The judge looked down at the documents again. Then he looked at me. Is the information contained here accurate? I nodded once. Yes, Your Honor. He leaned back slowly, absorbing the answer. My father's attorney had lost the confidence that carried him through his earlier argument. He stood quietly now, waiting. The woman in the navy suit spoke again, her tone steady. The respondent's employment history is classified. Her extended absences were operational assignments authorized through federal channels. She turned another page. Certain residential and financial irregularities referenced in this case are direct consequences of those assignments. No one interrupted. The judge removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "When did this service begin?" he asked. "Shortly after her undergraduate degree," the woman replied. The judge glanced down again. That had been nearly 8 years ago. 8 years of a life that could never be explained in rooms like this. 8 years of watching people assume the worst. Finally, the judge closed the folio. The room remained silent for several seconds. When he spoke again, his voice carried a different tone, careful, measured. "The court will need to reconsider several assumptions presented earlier in this hearing." He turned toward my father's attorney. "The claims regarding absence and employment appear incomplete." No one objected. There was nothing left to argue. The hearing would continue. Of course, legal systems move slowly, even when the truth arrives suddenly. But something had shifted. Not loudly. Just enough that the story everyone thought they understood about me no longer made sense. The woman in the navy suit gathered the documents and closed the folio. Before leaving, she gave me a small nod, professional and neutral. Then she turned and walked back down the aisle, disappearing through the same door she had entered. The courtroom fell quiet again. But it felt different now. Not because anyone had gasped. Not because anyone had applauded. But because for the first time in years, the silence surrounding my life had finally been explained. Even if only partially.